This is A Silent War Within, the podcast dedicated to confronting the unseen mental health battles carried by our first responder and healthcare heroes. This show is about real stories, real struggles, and real ways to survive the storm and come out stronger on the other side. For too long, stigma has kept you silent. But this is your space to bravely break that silence, share vital insights, and build a community where your well-being truly comes first. Because your service deserves unwavering support.
Welcome, everybody, to A Silent War Within. Today, unfortunately, we don't have a co-host. Well, I guess you can be a co-host. We'll let Michaela be the co-host. As always, you guys can find us on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all those places. You can also go to asilentwarwithin.com. If you need to reach out to us, we've got a few emails that you can reach out to us at. It's kevin@asilentwarwithin.com or kim@asilentwarwithin.com. You can get us that way. You can watch our content. We're getting really good feedback, really good streams on all the streaming platforms. If you will, when you stream it and you listen to it, make sure you go and leave us a review. It just lets Spotify and Apple Podcasts know to continue to push out our content to the front. So we would appreciate that. So today, we'll call her our special guest host now.
Special guest
is somebody who is near and dear to my heart. This is Michaela Davidson. She is like a sister-in-law to me and my wife. It's actually my wife's cousin's wife, but they grew up together more like brother and sister. So this is Michaela. She has done probably every kind of nursing that you can think of. And I wanted to have her on the show because she's just an all-around good girl, and she's got a lot to share. And so we're going to get started. So Michaela, how are you today?
I'm doing well. Kevin, how are you?
Good, good. Tell us about your nursing journey so far. Tell us about some of your experiences, where you come from, where you're at now. You don't have to give town if you don't want to, but certainly what part of the country you're in.
So I'm going to give a disclaimer first. I'm no one famous. I know Kevin's had a lot of famous guests. You are not going to be able to find me on the socials, okay? I'm very private. I do not have a TikTok, so if you try to stalk me, not going to happen, okay? But my name is Michaela. I've been a nurse for 10 years. I've worked every single job in the hospital you can pretty much work. I started in Tupelo, Mississippi, and I started traveling in 2017, and then I've been all over, as you can see on my plaques here on the wall.
Yeah,
I've worked in Dallas, Memphis, Tennessee. I did a 5-hospital system Methodist float pool contract, so 5 different hospitals in one system, and you never know where you're going till the day before. You never know what unit you're going to till you get there. So complete flexibility. And then now I live in New Hampshire. Me and my husband moved up here for his job, and I'm working on the seacoast of New Hampshire, and I love it.
Why do you love it so much? Because we miss you in Mississippi. So why do you love it so much?
I do love it. I will say, and we can talk about this more later, but living in New Hampshire, the seacoast especially, is a more of a ritzy type of vibe, more than it would be like in Mississippi. And I can with certainty say that I feel like the education of people in this demographic is a little higher than the clientele I was dealing with kind of in middle Mississippi. And unfortunately, that does bleed over to healthcare. So at the hospital I'm at, most of the patients have had a good education, and educating them about healthcare and why they're in the hospital and discharge and things like that just comes a little bit easier than, back home in Mississippi and Tennessee, unfortunately.
So dig into that a little bit, because I feel like that's kind of maybe not the most popular of opinions.
Yeah.
That we deal with a more uneducated, if you will, clientele. And I think that especially you and I, having worked in the Mississippi Delta, just because of the poverty that's there, I think that that's just comes along with the territory, the violence, the education level of the individuals that live there. So do you think that factors into how burned out we can get in healthcare?
It really does. when you're dealing with a population who is resilient to a lot of things in healthcare, and they're not as well educated as some other parts of the country. I will say that people who live here most of the time don't even see the other side of the world and how they live. They're very
Right.
blessed here to have really good education systems. I mean, Harvard is right down the road. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
like less than 40 miles or 50 miles for me right now. So, it's just different. You know, when you live in Mississippi and Tennessee, the access of a lot of people to
Mm-hmm.
a good quality education is hard. So, and that does, like I said, bleed over into healthcare and also just getting help when they need help. You've heard the old saying, like, if a farmer calls 911
Yeah.
himself, you have to go
You have to
like
go.
super fast.
It's gonna be bad. Yeah.
He's going to
I've
be dead.
definitely, yeah, I've definitely had those calls that it was somebody that we knew in the community that never called, and it was not good. It was never good. But I think that part of, really part of that when you're dealing with a poverty stricken area like the South, and not all of the South, but certain areas of the South has more of this than anything else. I think it inherently makes you a little bit more judgmental. It makes you a little bit more likely to see the bad in people when that's not really the case. And I'm not sure if you guys struggle with that in the coastline of New Hampshire or seashore or whatever you called it. But certainly here, that's something that I've experienced where you get really burnt out from people. You get over peopled, as I like to call it.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that goes from the type of people that you're dealing with. I always make the joke that when I worked in a large hospital here in Mississippi, I tackled more naked men and women running down the hall for mental illness than I would like to admit to. And I think that in turn goes back to, we deal with a lot of poverty. We deal with a lot of violence. We deal with a lot of mental health patients in the health system. So do you feel like it makes you judgmental, and do you have that problem in New Hampshire?
I feel like when I was in Memphis working in a very high crime area, the hospitals in the float system that I was in, I mean, some of those hospitals are in the worst, roughest neighborhoods. And when you get patients in, you kind of have to check your own self and your own
Mm-hmm.
empathy because no matter what they're dealing with, they're still people. They still need our help. Even if they're not the nicest to you, they are in the hospital trying to get the help they need at least.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you have a lot of situations, especially when I worked in Greenwood, Mississippi, and even in Memphis too, and Tupelo, like a lot of patients who they're on chronic dialysis or they have these chronic health conditions. It is a burden to them. And, you know, when I was a new nurse, and I think part of this is being young too, but when I was a new nurse, you'd have a patient who comes in and they have chronic dialysis and they just up and refuse their dialysis,
Mm-hmm.
right?
All the time.
And right. And it is really hard as a new nurse to remove that piece of judgmentalness from yourself. I don't know if that's really a word, judgmentalness,
I'm not sure.
being judgmental. Uh,
I'm
it's
just a
very hard to
paramedic.
like remove that from yourself and actually treat that person with care, love, and kindness because ultimately it is a burden having chronic health conditions. In the South, chronic health conditions are widespread.
Mm-hmm.
Here, a lot of people have access to health care, great insurance. So, a lot of those chronic conditions are well managed. So people can stay in the clinic. They don't stay in the hospital as much for, missing dialysis or, refusing their Lasix for heart failure patients. And then they come in and their legs are, this big.
Yeah.
So that judgmentalness and that empathy piece is one that even, today here, you have to kind of check yourself and remind yourself that at least they are here getting the help that they need.
Well, I think it also comes down to when I would train new hires that were paramedics or even EMTs, one of the things that I pushed forward a lot was these people are still human beings. They still deserve a certain level of dignity and respect just from being, for lack of better terminology, just by being our neighbors. Like, these are the people we live around and walk past on a daily basis, and sometimes we ignore. But when they're in front of us in a health system setting, it's our job to treat them with some dignity and some respect and just the general things you would provide any other human being. And I think that goes a long way. But the ones of us who don't have that experience a lot of burnout. Those who, are chronically, and one of the really huge topics that we cover on almost every show is that kindness is free. And it costs nothing to be kind to somebody. It costs nothing to treat somebody with a little bit of dignity. And really, a lot of these patients, all they care about in the moment is that they're heard, somebody to listen to them. So I think that's really important. One of the things that I found really interesting in all of our years of conversation was you and I tend to agree on that. Even though we have those patients that we have to get a little more stern and a little more rigid with, we really agree that it's okay to show a little bit of grace and a little bit of understanding in the moment. Now, we may walk out of the room and express our frustrations, however we choose to express those, whether to a friend or just saying one of those 4-letter words and moving on with our day.
That
but
we're not
really,
going to say today.
That we're not going to say today. You're right. We're not. I've advised Michaela not to say those words. Those are ugly words.
Never.
As I tell my son, those are adult words, and neither of us qualify as adults.
We're getting a G rating today.
We're getting a G rating. I love it. So, in preparation for this, Michaela did something that no guest has done, and I'm really excited for this. She actually formulated a list of questions to ask me. So one of the things I can always say about my family is they're going to be my fans. Everything I've done, I've been supported, whether it seems silly or whether it's something monumental like getting a degree. I've always been supported. So Michaela's been a listener of ours since the show started because she's going to support me, anything that I do. That's always been kind of our family's thing. We're going to be there for each other. If something were to happen to me right now, Michaela would drop everything and fly to Mississippi and same for us. We just have that type of relationship, I feel like, and our whole family does. We have a great support system. If it wasn't for our family, I don't know if my child would have as much stuff as he does, which may be good or bad, depending on how you look at it. I'm running out of bins to put stuff in. But so hit me with some questions that you came up with, and let's see how good I do at a rapid fire style questioning.
I'm ready. I'm actually really excited for these questions because I know I don't do TikTok and all that stuff, but some of these are like really hot topic conversation pieces right now. And I think the listeners of your show are going to find a lot of value in your answers because there are a lot of things that are in the media right now as current topics. So let's start with the first one. What do you feel like healthcare workers must do to start openly changing the narrative about mental health?
One of the things that we've talked about numerous times on this show is that we have got to get more comfortable in talking about feelings. A lot of things that we experience, we close down and we give the generalized, yes, I'm fine answer. And I've been in that category numerous times throughout the last 20 years. And I think once we kind of start to talk about it, you'll get more buy-in from people. So from a professional level, being a leader now, there's a lot of leadership classes that goes along with that. And one of the things that we learn is when we implement something new, buy-in typically takes 6 to 8 weeks. So in a grand scale, like talking about something as broad as mental health, I mean, because there's all facets of mental health. I think one of the things you've got to realize, and I always, and this pales in comparison to what I'm about to use, but so at one time, there was a suppression of African Americans. It took a handful. If you really look at civil history and civil rights history, what you find is it took a pretty small group of people to stand up initially and start to say, we're not taking this anymore. And then a movement started to happen. And I think it's the same thing here. It will take a group of a few of us to start to make this a topic that is easily discussed and something that we can discuss in meetings and in check-ins and the things that we're naturally doing because we're healthcare and we have those systems established. The more we talk about it, the more comfortable we get to talk about it. So when we are in crisis or when we are in kind of a bad spot, it's easy to come and say, I'm not doing well. And that's more generally accepted. So I think the biggest part of it is bringing it to the forefront, talking about it from a health system level. Health systems have got to get more involved. So one of the things that I mean by more involved, many workplaces have employee assistants, right? And whether that's a department or counselors or just people to talk to, that's their jobs, like to listen and to talk to you. And my experience with them is you go in and you talk to them and they're great listeners, but then they refer you to a psychiatrist, psychologist, counselor, mental health professional, basically. Well, that's all well and good, but why are those people not on our staff? Why are those people not ready in-house right then? Because if I'm in crisis and I go to, say, EAP, Employee Assistance Program, and I talk to someone who is not necessarily a licensed therapist, but someone whose job is just there to listen and to refer, if I'm in crisis and I leave after talking about it, I'm likely still in crisis. Just talk therapy alone and having somebody to listen to me does not change the fact that the crisis is still there. So we've got to, as a healthcare system as a whole, find funding, whether it be from local or state government, or whether it be from in-house funds, or whether it be from donor funds. We have to find a way to get those people on our staff and have them readily available. EMS Avenger put it probably the best way that I've heard when we had him on our show, and I've used this example a few times. Do you remember I Love Lucy? Did you ever watch that as a kid?
Yeah. I loved it.
Yeah. I mean, we all did with our parents or in reruns or whatever. There's a scene in that where they're working in the chocolate factory and the conveyor belt's just continually running and they're trying to stuff as many chocolates in their mouth because they've gotten behind on the packaging. Right. Well, that's where we are in healthcare for the mental health system. I think that we're at a pivotal point to where if we don't do something now, we will break. And I think we're to the point where it's too late for us to even implement that now. We've got to break and have a rise from the ashes kind of story. I think that that's one of the things that absolutely is going to happen. I don't think it's something that we can just keep putting off and putting off and putting off. We're to the point where even if we make these strides immediately, we're still going to have what is going to look like in the media and to the outside eye as an internal collapse, a combustion, if you will, where it's going to implode. There's just no way around it. But one of the things hospital systems have got to do so that when that implosion does inevitably happen, those providers, those mental health providers are there and ready to provide service. And when we're in crisis, there's somebody actually there ready and to provide service. I'm not saying that those folks that you go in and they listen to you and they refer you are not good, but it's an extra step in the process. If we could get a licensed counselor right then, that would be at least a step in the right direction. It's not going to solve all of our problems, of course, but it will be a step in the right direction. And that's kind of what I think we have to do.
Yeah, and plus to add to your point, Kevin, if you go through those processes that they have in place, which are great, they're a start. But once you go through that process and then, they're going to try to make you an appointment with a therapist or a counselor. Yeah, that would still be great. I would still love that. But what are we going to do right now? I'm in
Yeah,
crisis mode right now.
Because in the meantime, you're waiting on an appointment for 2 weeks to a month.
Right.
And the flip side to that coin is that not only are we in crisis, but there's also a crisis occurring on the mental health provider side that there's not enough for the people who need this help. Right. So that also provides another level of problems that will inevitably, if we start this, if we were to start doing this today, there's not enough providers. And one of my other guests that we'll release before your episode, we talked about this and how there's also a crisis happening in the mental health world, that there's just not enough providers. And so you're on a wait list for a month or 2 months. And by that time, you've processed the best way that you can. Yeah. And you may not be in crisis anymore, but now you have that secondary damage to deal with, whether it be that you've, had a blow up on your family, or whether your family's left you, or You know, whether you've tried to take your own life, there's just so many problems that occur when you start talking about mental health that from the outsider looking in may seem very easy to fix. You know, people who don't have the knowledge of what healthcare looks like from an internal side may say, oh, well, you know, I've heard that's what you signed up for. This is part of the deal. This is the nature of the beast. You know, all those quips that we use with each other to describe kind of the mentality of you put yourself here. It almost passes blame. And that's not ever what we want to do when you talk about a mental health crisis or mental health struggles. So I think that there's a multifaceted answer to that. You have to educate the public, you have to fix the mental health provider part, and you have to start providing on-site mental health resources at the time of incident and not 2 weeks later, a month later.
Right. And I want to add to that one thing that the hospital that I'm at right now actually does right is they have a Code Lavender. It's a very underutilized resource, but it is a resource we have. And I want to talk about why it's underutilized too. Um, but it's Code Lavender. So if you have a situation that is overwhelming for you, you have a patient code, you have, a family member or a patient get aggressive with you, or you just need a moment, to like stop from the chaos. Code Lavender's called, you will have a person come to you, address your crisis, take your patients, do whatever we need to do to like help you get through the current crisis. I think that should be implemented everywhere. Since I've been working at this hospital 2.5 years now, not once have I ever heard it been called, not on night shift or not on the shifts that I've worked, but it is a resource we have. I'd like to talk about why it's underutilized.
Why is it underutilized?
So, a lot of times, the people who are the Code Lavender staff is the house supervisor, which is the current role that I'm in at my hospital. And I've done management too, but it's the supervisor. So, when you have an issue, right, the supervisor is coming to you who is not I'm not trained
Right.
as a licensed therapist. I'm not trained to deal with a crisis situation. I didn't get any training in that department. So when you're having a breakdown, it's just going to be a human and a human. I'm going to love on you. I'm going to, do whatever you need me to do to make you okay in that moment. But am I trained in the verbiage to help you get through a crisis professionally? Probably not. I'm just going to be my Michaela self and try to love on you. What do I need to do? Take your patients. Do you need a break? Do you need to go to your car? Tell me, I'll do it. Whatever will make you feel better. But if you're actually having a crisis and a meltdown, having a licensed professional there that's away from the scenario. The house supervisor, if you're having a code, they're already there with you, that's away from the situation to come and handle things with you. I mean, that should be implemented everywhere, day and night shift.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you guys do that and that that's a program. However, I will say one of the things that ends up happening almost inevitably is exactly what you said. You said a key phrase that I picked up on. So when you tell somebody who's struggling with mental health, and this is not a dig at you individually, this is just saying across the board, we as humans immediately go, what can I do for you? What do you need? Well, when you're in a mental health crisis, you don't know what you need. You don't know what to do. So having that licensed person there would fill in that gap, because in your case, that's coming from a genuine, honest, good place.
Right.
But what it does is it shifts the responsibility of finding out what to do back to the person who's in the crisis in the moment. And that's just, it feels like from somebody who's been in that situation on both sides, being the one that has done the peer support and responded to those. We don't have a name for it, but for ours, it's just people reaching out. But when you respond to that, and even from a respondent side, it feels like, oh God, one more decision for me to make, one more something for me to tell. So I'm not saying don't say that, but because it does come from a good place, but without that mental health professional, there leaves that gap of, oh, they want me to make a choice. They want me to tell them what I need them to do. And if you've ever been in grief, it's the same way when people go, "What can I do for you?" Well,
Right.
I don't know. I have no
Yeah.
idea. Fun story that will take you back. Were you in the picture when Mindy died?
No, she died 1 year before me and
1 year
Dylan met.
before. Yeah. So Mindy is my mother-in-law. This tattoo on my arm is her actual handwriting, and that we found in her drawer, and her death date, which was just 3 days ago, August 26th. And it happened in, I have to look now because it's been so long, 2018. But one of the things that happened in that was you had, because Shaylee's my wife, are so well known, you had hundreds, literally hundreds of people, because we work in a large healthcare system and we know a lot of people. We've both been here for almost 10 years. And what can we do for you? I don't know. But it felt like another responsibility added to our plate. Like, all these people want to help. I don't know what to tell them to do. Like that kind of feeling. So I think that's the same. And coming from a mental health crisis myself in the past, like, there is part of that when somebody says that gives that feeling of responsibility that you just don't need. So I think, to your point, having professionals that are with that Code Lavender team, or to even my point, to have them on staff, that fills in that gap of what am I supposed to say and do. And I'm not going to go into the training part of it because I think I know what one of your next questions are. So go ahead and ask your next question.
All right. So, what classes or resources do you think hospitals should put in place that would increase the well-being for staff?
So one of the things that our hospital does, and it's a national level class, it's from the federal government, but it's called a mental health first aid provider. And this is one of the classes that got me started down this road of having a passion for mental health. And it is an excellent class for somebody who wants to be peer support, know what to say in the time of crisis, how to deal with people, like that kind of. So I think that whether it's that or whether it's something else that's put together, for me and my line of work, I went and took the mental health resource officer, and it's geared toward EMS more so than anything else, EMS and public service. So that was my two classes that I initially like really dug in and started to get my feet wet and started to research more on my own. But I think one of the things that is more appropriate and more feasible for people to do, those classes are very easy to get and take. You can do those right now if you wanted to. Again, those are mental health first aid and mental health resource officer. For EMS, fire, police, man, mental health resource officer is a great way of recognizing, because it really is geared towards somebody who's going to be in a response style role. So if somebody's in crisis or if somebody has a bad call or a bad patient, those are the people you want going, because those are trained. And we've trained, I think, our numbers up to 20 or 30 people so far, because once you get your mental health resource officer, it's actually a resiliency officer, but I always replace the word for whatever reason in my mind. But mental health resiliency officer, once you get that training, you're the response style person. So if you're in a peer support group like ours, if somebody calls and has something going on, they have someone assigned to them that then goes to their side, reaches out to them, whatever the right way of communication should be at that moment. And it teaches you about things. Oh, there's your dog. I heard her. Poor Annie.
Sweet Annie.
Yeah, sweet Annie. It teaches you about the way to respond to people. It teaches you about, when someone's in crisis, how to recognize their zones from thriving all the way to crisis, kind of crisis intervention type of space. It teaches you how to deal with those conversations. It teaches you how to respond appropriately without putting anybody in a situation where they feel attacked or feel threatened or feel overwhelmed. It doesn't add to their crisis. So I think those are two great classes. One of the other things that I have seen done, and I've talked about this, I went to a mental health conference in Iowa 2 years ago, Des Moines, Iowa. And it was fantastic. But one of the things that helped me the most through that conference is the type of, what is it called? Panel interviews. There you go. I had to find the word in my brain.
Panel
There,
interviews?
it wasn't interviews for us. It was interviews from people that were respected, revered, people who do the same job as you. And they're sitting on stage and they're talking about all of their worst days, and they're having a conversation just like you and I are having. And it just, again, normalizes that. So when you see people who are respected, and these in a hospital setting, these would be people like your COO, your charge nurses, your patient care coordinators sitting on a stage, people that you respect from a general associate position, people that you respect talking about, I've had bad days too, and telling those stories. I think that, and I've said this before, but I think when I was in some of the bad spots that I've been in over calls or what have you, one of the best things that would have helped me, and the reason that we started this show, is to have somebody to come alongside you and say, me too. I've been there.
Yeah.
That is the best feeling, to have somebody, because when you're in the moment, it feels very lonely, because your mind starts to play tricks and talk to you the way that it typically does and say, you're the only person that feels like this. There's nobody on the planet that's experiencing what you're experiencing. There's nobody that can relate. And there's hundreds of thousands of people that can relate. Most people in our line of work can relate because we've had a bad day. We've seen a kid die. We've seen all these horrible things. We've seen these tragedies. We've heard the sound of a mother scream after they've lost their child. And for somebody to come up beside me and just say that would have been such a relief, to know that I'm at least not alone. There's somebody else that knows what I'm going through. And then after you hear that, oh, okay, somebody else has been through this, their opinion now matters. Their words now matter. Their words have validity to them and weight to them when they speak to you. You're like, oh, you've been through this, so you can know where I'm coming from. You can know what I'm feeling. So I think, really, again, going back to the first question, this is just a way to make it more open and honest. But to see leaders sit on a stage and go, I've struggled. One of the greatest things about my leader now is that when he first came in, he put that all out on the table when he starts looking at like what our company does, what, because he was new. He had never been in this particular system. I almost said the name of where I work. He had never been in the healthcare system like ours. He had never been in that environment. So he wanted to know all the ways that we did things. And one of the things that was so freeing is he came in and said, hey guys, just want to be transparent. I see a counselor. I've seen counselors, I've been through this therapy and that therapy because of years of bad traumatic calls. These are some of them. And he shared, well, then he had that, we all kind of had that aha moment of like, oh, this guy gets it. Like, he gets what we do. And it was a level of respect that came with that. So I think that we've become so stigmatized to mental health, and we've become so, oh, that's taboo of a subject to talk about in the workplace. It makes others that go through that same struggle feel the exact same way, that, oh, we're not supposed to talk about that. We're not supposed to feel. And that's the opposite of what it really should be. Our feelings should drive our care. The feeling of wanting to do our best should drive our care. The feelings of wanting to save patients should drive our care. But, we've gotten into such a habit of not talking about this and letting it all go. And then we repress, and then we have some big blow up and quit our jobs or walk off or whatever we're doing, or cuss somebody out, or, fill in the blank. And that directly links back to, what's your mental health like? Well, not great. So it's really good to have that constant compass of, am I okay today? Am I not doing so good? And know that going in. But talking about that makes that much easier to develop in a cultural style setting like a healthcare system.
I want to talk about something really taboo that you said that really reminded me of something I really wanted to speak about on this show while I was here.
All right.
There is one thing in healthcare that could be reformed in a second, but for some reason it still
Just
has not
one?
changed. I think you're going to know this language now that you're a manager. What could you have done differently?
Oh, yeah. Oh,
When
yeah.
I was a manager, we had this form that we would fill out when someone got hurt, got attacked, whatever it was. And it would say, what could you have done differently? Sometimes I wouldn't even ask the staff that. I was like, it would it would tick me off beyond any reasonable doubt to have someone get hurt and then ask them, what could you do differently next time? What could you have done differently this time? That's not helpful.
It feels very motherly. It
They've already
feels,
done the
and not in a good
self-reflection.
way. Yeah, yeah. It feels very motherly and not a good way. Like mom's got you hemmed up in the corner, giving you the business, and she goes, "What will you do differently next time?"
Right.
Kind of. And I agree with you. I think that question can go away here's a caveat, for most situations.
Most situations.
There are some situations, such as patient harm, that you use it as a learning opportunity. The verbiage can be different, but there's certain situations that it certainly can be a learning opportunity for that associate, and to say, how could we have done that differently? My favorite question from a management's point of view is, instead of saying that, saying, walk me through your thought process to figure out how we got here. Because that's more, take me through what you thought in the moment. That's not, what are we going to do different next time? And then after they walk through their thought process, then you can talk to them and have a more casual conversation about why that thought was incorrect, what we could do different if this happens again. And I think that, so words are everything. I'm a big words guy, clearly, because I can talk to the end of time, and you can too.
We've already been talking 36 minutes.
Yeah,
It's going to be a long episode.
But if that wall behind you just nodded every once in a while, I mean, I could talk to it. It's fine. All I need is a good nod, and I can keep going. Michaela and I have always had very long, drawn out conversations. The family
deep
knows
conversations.
Deep conversations, really deep conversations. One of the first times that I can remember meeting you at your apartment in Tupelo, we just sat down and immediate, like, could talk to this girl forever. And we've had our
Remember when we were talking that one time and we said, was it me and you are alike, or is it me and Shaylee? And Dylan and Shaylee are alike, right?
No, it's me and you.
Me and you. Yeah, that's what I thought. It was me and you. And then Shaylee and Dylan are alike.
Because me and you are both fiery and talkers, and when our fire gets big opinions, big feelings, all those things. And we've had the opposite of those deep conversations. We've been across kitchens yelling at each other. So me and Michaela,
we always agree on one thing. Me and you both, and Shaylee too, she's a nurse, but we're very passionate about healthcare and reform in healthcare, which I think is one reason I love your podcast. And I'm totally 100% behind it, because these conversations need to happen. And I'm really excited to be in a generation of nurses that we're going to see some of that reform.
Oh, we're absolutely going to see changes in healthcare. I think we're going to see changes in healthcare, not just because we all push for it, but I also think that we're going to see changes in healthcare because even though the generation behind us gets a lot of slack for kind of being lazy, our generation, the generations who are now reaching 30s and 40s are generations that typically, once we get behind something, we're not going to quit until we make it happen.
Right.
There's a large population of people that are just not going to quit. And I think this mental health thing is one of those things that we have all experienced the problems with, having some type of mental health crisis or big feeling and big response from a situation. And we're going to push to make sure nobody feels that way. So I think that these kind of conversations you and I are having are valid and needed, and it only goes to break that stigma of mental health that we've developed over the last probably 10, 15 years, because I remember when the mental health thing really got a big push in EMS, and it was railed against. I'm talking about people did not want that, did not want to talk about that. All the mental health, like the Code Greens, the AT&T FirstNets, that does a lot with mental health. And I've mentioned them before because they're the two biggest players in the game when you talk about funding and getting things started. But when they started, man, they had an uphill climb just to get to where they are now. And those then 25-year-olds pushed and pushed and pushed. And going back to the example I used, It's the same with civil rights. You had a group of people that just refused to quit no matter what, through beatings, through cussing and lynching and all these other things. You had a group of people that just refused to quit. And that's the key to make anything work. You just refuse to quit. I have a phrase somewhere here on one of my plaques or something in my office that says everything is figure outable. If you just take that mentality that everything can be figured out and we all work together, I know that's some kumbaya stuff, but if we all piece ourselves together and figure out a way to fix it, it will get fixed. We'll see that change. I believe that.
And plus, to add to what you said, it is super easy to fight for something when you know what you're fighting for is right.
Yeah, and
And
this is right.
speaking about mental health and the importance of mental health and healthcare is super important, and it's right. It
Yeah,
is something that
absolutely.
has to be addressed.
It's something that's needed.
It's something that's needed, and it is a department, unfortunately, in healthcare that needs radical reform.
Mm-hmm.
I know we
Mm-hmm.
kind of talked about this yesterday, but it is true. When you have a nurse, just say a nurse. I told you about this yesterday that, as far as first responders go, nurses aren't really considered first responders because we're not the first on the scene. That's what that means.
Yeah.
The people who are first on the scene, their trauma, their PTSD, their anxiety related to those situations is obvious. You've
Yeah.
seen limbs on the highway from a motorcycle wreck where they got torn to pieces. That's traumatic.
Mm-hmm.
You've seen a mom when you get on scene holding her lifeless baby,
Mm-hmm.
helpless. That's traumatic. All of those things that first responders deal with, it's very traumatic. PTSD, it's like a
Mm-hmm.
war zone. You're seeing the worst of the worst day in and day out, and you're clocking in and getting paid to see this trauma over and over and over and over again. So, understandably, this reform has to start with first responders.
One of my favorite pieces of statistical data is the typical person, the lay person, if you will have somewhere between 8 and 15 traumatic events in their entire life, right? A first responder with 10 or more years of experience will witness 400 to 600 traumatic events in their career. And that's in a mediocre call volume place. You put that in somewhere like New Orleans or New York or Chicago, that
Yeah.
number significantly increases. So I think that this is a problem that needs to be dealt with. It needs to be dealt with quickly. It's not something we can wait on. It's something that, yes, I do weekly episodes, but I'm also involved with Code Green. I'm also involved with FirstNet. I also have connections to all those places that are really putting in the real work. And like I said before, this is an outlet, and sure, this is a way to bring awareness, but this is not real work. We enjoy this. I'm talking about the guys that are boots on the ground and doing the real work. And yes, I've instituted a peer support program that changed the culture of where I work. And it's gotten to where people just naturally call and check on each other, which was not something that was done before. Like, people realize that everybody's got feelings and that they need to be checked on. And when there's something traumatic that sounds traumatic, it typically usually is to the provider that does it. So,
I have a friend, Sasha, that it breaks my heart, but at the same time, it does really make me really happy that I have such supportive nursing friends. Every time she has a traumatic experience or a patient die or, a code in the hospital, she always texts me and tells me that she loves me. And she just like wants to check in on the people that she loves because, life is so fragile and, we
yeah,
take it so for granted. And so just checking in on the people that you love and that you care about and, having your tribe. And I feel like it's really important as, a person in healthcare. Healthcare, I was going to talk about this too, about like first responders, but like first responders, that trauma is obvious. It's obvious why you have trauma, anxiety, depression. But in the hospital setting, it is like a constant state of anxiety. When you're a paramedic, you may have this up and then a down and then a up and then a down between calls. It's like, oh, I'm chilling in between calls or whatever, and then on to the next trauma. And then, but in the hospital system, some days it can feel like there's this never ending just
Mm-hmm.
line of anxiety you have, whether it's a bad shift, a bad week, you're short staffed, whatever it may be.
Yep, that's right. And one of the things that I like to point out is when we say first responders, typically people gravitate toward police, fire, EMS. That's usually the three big groups. But one of the groups that we don't think about often enough, and I have gotten to experience this over the last couple of years of being a dispatcher, is the dispatchers, because there's something to be said about knowing what to do and knowing how to react to what's going on with a patient, and then being put behind a phone where there is a very helpless feeling that you can't get rid of. And especially 911 dispatchers, those guys are rock stars, because they hear something traumatic or bad, they have to have the wherewithal to flip to a book, know exactly what to tell the caller, go through all this process, get the resources out. Like, it's a very heavy job. And we're interviewing one of the more TikTok famous dispatchers soon, and I'm very excited about that interview because she's going to have a viewpoint that we've not had on the show. Just like you're technically our first nurse to have on the show. You have a viewpoint that is not where I come from. Sure, I see it from my wife's standpoint because she's a nurse, and I hear some of her opinions about burnout and the load that she carries, and she's in management too. So it really elevates when you get into management. It goes beyond patient care, and it goes into a level of stress and anxiety about dealing with the people that are put in your charge.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a whole nother piece of mental health that is not actively discussed enough, how leaders deal with mental health problems too, because it is a stress to have your decisions directly affect people's lives.
Yeah.
There was just recently, we had to, from a corporate level, they decided to consolidate resources. And in layman's terms, that means somebody's going to lose their job. And that's just how it is. So it's very hard to have to deliver that news and deliver those compensation packets and things like that. It was very much a trying time to be in leadership because that decision wasn't mine to make. However, I was the executor of said decision, and that was very heavy and very hard. So I think that there's those two distinct groups of leadership and dispatch that we don't have enough resources there for. We don't put enough focus on those two groups, but they have mental health struggles too. Everybody loves to hate's a strong word, but dislike their leader. That's easy.
Or talk crap about them.
And that's an easy thing, but
I've been on the flip side of that too.
Yeah, I have too. I mean, I literally loathed, and I wish Kim was on here because we could talk about it, but we just loathed one of our leaders, and every time something would happen, it was his fault. You're angry, you're mad, you're frustrated, you're overwhelmed by the decisions that they make and how off kilter they were. Some of the decisions were so far-fetched. Now being in this position, I realize that there's a lot of that corporate side of it that we as associates don't see. And there's a lot of decisions that are made that we are just simply executors of, but we get the heat from it. And that's what we signed up for. That's what we're here for, right? But that does not lessen the mental health toll that takes. Dispatchers are the same way. They signed up for that. They knew what they were getting into. People will say, oh, it's just a phone call. And for me, who has been out in the field for the last 10 years prior to coming into a dispatcher role, that's easy for you to say, but when you take away that patient care side and implement it's just a phone call, that was a different level of stress that I had not had before. So it's very much a different job. It's very different. Nurses are starting to have, and have had for longer than first responders, I feel like, have had sort of a push for mental health, but it's coming more and more so to the forefront that, these nurses stay in fight or flight mode for 12 hours a day, and then they can't turn it off when they go home. Yeah. This might be a problem. And I don't think...
When I get home, I'm talked and cared out.
Yeah, absolutely.
When you talk to the salty paramedic, I loved his episode, by the way. He's so awesome. I love all of his stuff.
I liked him too.
Um,
He's a good guy.
he's funny too. But I want to get his book on like marriage for, healthcare people, first responders, because and my husband, he now that he has been with me for a while, he's kind of understanding just by looking at me, he can tell like what kind of, day days in a row it's been. I work nights, so we're kind of like passing ships in the night,
I
Sometimes when we
get it.
see each other,
Us too.
he's driving to work, I'm coming home. But when you work 4 or 5 days in a row, which is kind of what I like to work because I block my days, that day that I'm off, I'm cared out. I'm touched. I don't want to have to care about anybody. I don't want to have to talk to anybody. I do not want to put on my customer service voice and my customer service face for anybody.
And
So, like, even leaving the house is difficult.
I don't know how, and maybe somebody can comment on some of these shorts or this episode or whatever, and tell me how it works to be married to somebody who's not in this line of work. Your case is a very interesting case because Dylan has done a lot of things and understands a lot of things. So he's gone down the EMT route. So at least he's been on an ambulance. He gets it. He's been with me in the back of an ambulance. He's seen the things that I've seen. And it's very much a different situation with you guys because, one, he's been around me for the last 10 years and heard my stories and seen my struggles. And then also he did it for a little while himself. And he also just has a general understanding because he has so many military friends that also have affected the way that he deals with things. But how do people have relationships with folks that don't get it? How does that? I don't know. I'm genuinely asking whoever wants to chime in here, in the comment section.
If you have a spouse, I mean, Kevin, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
no, you're fine.
If you have a spouse who doesn't understand healthcare at all, they've never been around anybody in healthcare, their mom, sister, aunt, uncle, whoever's not in healthcare, right? And they don't understand that stressful environment every single day. I mean, you literally have people's lives in your hands. If you don't have a supportive partner, it is so hard. I'm very blessed when I come in, Dylan, here's my stories, about my day, and he understands, wow, that was traumatic. Like, don't mess with her. Sometimes I can be like a porcupine, just stay away from me. Don't talk to me. I just need a decompressive time. And I want to talk about the things you do to kind of decompress. But like for me, if I work 4 nights in a row, I'm very lucky because I can come home and go to sleep and no one's here during the day.
Mm-hmm.
Dylan works days, obviously. So I kind of have like 8 hours just to myself, that peace and quiet, that calm. Even on my first day off after working like 4 in a row, the alarm bells, the call lights, the bed alarms, they ring in my head constantly. And it takes about 8 hours to get done with that. I dream that I'm at work.
Yeah, it's alarm fatigue. I mean, that's the name of it. That's what it is.
Like
it's
being
alarm
in a
fatigue.
casino for 14 hours.
Oh,
that's
God,
what it feels
I'd
like.
die.
I would die. But that's the way the hospital is.
Yeah,
It's
I
alarms
know.
and chirps and beeping 24/7. And then you dream that you're at work for 12 hours. But one thing I really wanted to talk about, I know we're like almost at an hour. It's crazy.
It's all good.
But I have to travel. I know me and Dylan, we don't have any children, so we travel all the time. Anytime that we can, we're out of this house. For me, I used to always feel guilty if I was at home doing nothing and they asked me, "Can you work tonight?" because we're short-staffed. I would feel personally guilty that I didn't get up off the couch and go into work because I knew they were going to be short-staffed. My friends were at work and they were going to be short. They say you grow out of that the longer you're a nurse. You do, but it's because inside your heart has hardened to that type of stressful working environment, and you're a protector of your own peace.
And I think that that's one of the keys that I'm still having to learn. So my counselor, every time I go see her, will say, "What have you done for you?" Because if you're like me, and you guys are a little different, but if you're like me, I have a lot of hats that I wear. So I'm a ministry school student. I'm an avid Christ follower and churchgoer and involved in all those things. So I wear that hat. I'm a leader. Sometimes I have to jump back into the paramedic role and be a paramedic. I'm a daddy. I'm a husband, and those things come first. But I wear all these hats and they interchange so often that sometimes I have to take a step back and go, what have I done for me? One of the things that I found that has been extremely helpful, other than my nicotine, caffeine, and Visine addictions. And yes, the Visine is an addiction. My eyes dried. I don't know. Maybe it's all the caffeine. One of the things that I've found so helpful is before I leave here every day, I will turn the lights off. And this sounds so silly. I will turn the lights off and just sit here and reflect on the day that I've had, what decisions I've made, what I need to do that did not get done, and forgiving myself for that shortcoming and going, that's okay. The other thing that I do that I've talked about on numerous episodes is in my shower, there is a mirror that hangs right below the shower head, like just a small mirror where all you can see is your face. Don't be nasty. I saw your face. Stop.
My brain.
You said this was
mechanisms, dirty thoughts.
This was a G show. We said that from the start, and here you go making faces.
I didn't even say anything.
You didn't have to. I saw your face, and she doesn't hide her face good anyway.
Come on.
Yeah, don't stop. Anyway, one of the things that I have to do to myself intentionally is to self-talk, and I talk about how healthy it is to self-talk, because naturally your brain talks for you a little bit, and when you fail, it's going to tell you, oh, you failure. You can call it Satan, you can call it whatever you want, but your brain's going to do some self-talking, regardless of who that's motivated by. And I have to intentionally say, you're a good dad, you're a good husband, and you're a good leader, or you're a good boss, because those are the things that I internally struggle with the most. I want to be the best dad. I want to be the best husband. And that, just those two things alone for some men can be extremely exhausting. And you can just be worn down and tired from just those two hats. But you add all the others to it that we naturally have to do. You add the leader, you add or for some folks that maybe I want to be a good paramedic, and that used to be mine. I want to be a good nurse. I want to be all these things. And then at the end of the day, you look back and there's no on fire burning evidence that you did that. So naturally, as humans, we want this big aha behind us every time. We want to look back and see, oh, I saved this baby and that baby, and I did all these fantastic things. You want these big grandeur type of results, and that doesn't always happen. There's some days where you didn't have any of that. It was just normal work stuff all day long, and it was just the most mundane day. And that's okay. Those are the times where you have to go, you know what? Even the little things make a difference.
Right.
So mine is always that little decompression moment. There's been a few shifts where I've just had to sit in the driveway for a little while, but I need that 5 to 10 minutes worth of just be quiet, my brain. And I listen to either podcast or music on the way home, and I just don't think about anything else but whatever is on that show, or listening to that music and singing. And I can't sing worth a flip, but still, it's a private concert. I don't invite people to it. Yeah. But I think I hit my desk.
It did make a joyful noise. I want to remind you.
It did. And I'm very joyous with my noises, for sure. But part of...
Sorry, I don't understand.
I don't want you to understand. Anyway, Watch is trying to talk. I got fat hands, so every time I move my hand like this, it knocks the butt. Anyway, I think one of the most important things is, one, that self-talk, and to two, give yourself space to feel and to have a minute with yourself. Even those intrusive thoughts, if you sit with them long enough, you can find positive in them. Even those intrusive thoughts, you sit there and go, you know what? Maybe I didn't do that as well. So how can I make sure that doesn't happen again? And you start to work through that.
And Kim talks about dark humor
Yeah. And it's so funny. So I interviewed a licensed therapist last week that will come out the episode before
I'm so
yours.
excited.
And she is 100% data driven. Like all of her stuff is very, very data analytics, and the things she talks about is very, very educated, more educated than this conversation will ever be.
Right.
But she's very educated, very smart, beautiful, talented young lady, and she's going to do great things. She's dedicated her whole career to, first responders and healthcare, and that's what she wants. That's the only patient she wants to deal with because she just loves it so much. And she talked about dark humor, and it was such a good episode because the data says dark humor is actually a licensed therapist kind of coping mechanism. Like that is something they say is a normal coping mechanism for us. So you and I are good.
That's great for me.
Yeah, you and I are good.
There's only one person at work, and if when this episode comes out, they'll know exactly who they are because I joke about it with them all the time. There's only one person at my job whose humor is darker than mine. And whenever I'm feeling like a really terrible nurse for the humor that I have, I can always go to this person and they just remind me that their dark humor is worse than mine. And it makes me feel good that I'm not the darkest
Yeah.
of the dark hearts.
I mean, dark humor is something we use to cope with things. It's something we use to get a laugh. And the reason that it works, this was the interesting part. The reason that it works so well is not because of what we're saying. It's because of the natural laughter that it brings. And that old adage that laughter is the best medicine is really true. It releases the endorphins that make you feel happier. So when we use dark humor and we get tickled at ourselves, as we often do, and we have that little chuckle, it is releasing the happy hormone that tells our bodies you're happy. So yeah, it's a clinically proven thing that actually works to have dark humor. So I can't wait for
And
Kim
that's
to
why
hear
you should
this one so
always
she'll
share it
feel.
with your coworkers. But there's always, I know this is just funny, but there's always that one nurse or
There's
that
always
one
one.
LNA who's like so like innocent and like whatever that they're like clutching their pearls,
It's always the new grads, the poor new
Always.
grads. And we love our new grads, but you
Always.
guys have not developed the dark humor yet. New
And they're, like,
paramedics and
actually
EMTs are the same
upset.
way. Yeah. Well, the
Yeah.
paramedics and EMTs and firefighters and people that I've been around, they don't get upset. They're just like more appalled. Like, how could you guys say that?
How can your brain think that?
Yeah. How can your brain think that? And then as time goes by,
They get
there's one that works here with us that I trained him his very first day as an EMT. And it's kind of a full circle thing where a lot of the people that I have had a career with previous to this are now working for me and are some of the people that I am charged with taking care of. And it's so funny to see his, like, what's the word I'm looking for? His journey through it, because as he went through it, I can remember the very first day us joking and laughing and having a good time like we do, sitting around a table at Waffle House. And he's just like, oh my gosh, you guys are horrible. Like that's what he was thinking. And you can just see that he feels like he is out of place. Well, now he's just as dark and messed up as the rest of us. And
it changes you.
It does. And this is what I said
you.
every single episode. The things we see and the things we do chemically change the makeup of our brain.
It does.
And there are studies out there that just reinforce that over and over and over again.
Do you know one thing that I've had to being married? Obviously, it's my first marriage, my only marriage. Do you know one thing that I found really difficult?
What?
I know you're going to say, but Shaylee's different 'cause she's a nurse. But one thing that I find really difficult is the things that people think in their head when they come to the emergency room. Like, Dylan knows this. We're not going to the emergency room unless we're already dead.
Oh, yeah.
It's like the people come in that, think something is an emergency, right? And it's completely not.
It's not.
And like, why didn't you go to urgent care?
And then, like, when I've had to go to the ER for perfect example, last year, not this year, but last year at my son's birthday, he gets to like crying and wailing, and I can push on his lower abdomen and he's got rebound tenderness. And I'm like, oh, this is like 100% appendicitis, like just new. And we drive to the ER. He's screaming at the top of his lungs. I mean, poor baby was just in pain. And I mean, we get into the ER and this kid lets out the biggest, loudest flatulence, Michaela.
I know. I know the story time and time again.
And we're like, really, dude? But when you go there and it's for something that you think is worthy of an ER, and even when it's not, you know, you're like, I'm so sorry. We were just continuously apologizing because we know, like, abdominal pain is one of those that comes in and everybody's got abdominal pain. I mean, it gets, I would venture to say that somewhere 50 to 60% of the patients in the ER at the current moment, anywhere in the country, their complaint is going to be abdominal pain. It's one of the most common complaints in the healthcare world. So we know that it's
chest
like
pain that's not a STEMI.
Yeah. I mean, it's
pain
just
can be a lot of different things.
Yeah, and it's just two of those complaints that get like, maybe something may not. But we were just so apologetic. So when healthcare people go to the ER, that's the point of the whole story, is that when we go to the ER for anything, we're like, oh, I'm sorry. I rolled a four-wheeler on top of myself 2 years ago and apologized for coming to the ER. I had a knot on my shoulder that stood up here. I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. Because to me,
those are the people you want.
It wasn't bad enough to be in an ER. My kid's got a rough life ahead of him because he's got to have some appendage hanging off for us to go to the ER. The only times we've been in the ER is the gas episode, which we left without being seen. And the second one, no, the lip. It was the lip.
Oh, lip,
it was the stitches in the lip right there on that vermilion border that is so apt to infection. So that's why we went, is because where it was, I was concerned that there was going to be an infections and possibly thought plastics was going to get involved in all this stuff. But luckily that didn't happen, and he got 4 or 5 little stitches and he was fine.
I mean, you do have an all-boy boy, so.
I do have an all-boy boy.
Boy.
And when Michaela comes, it's all boy and all boy girl together. And it's just
WWE remake.
It's WWE all weekend long, and they get on my nerves because it's all the time. And Michaela's got as much energy as he does, I think.
If somebody ain't screaming, we ain't having a good time.
We ain't having a good time. That's right. That could be in multiple different situations. This is a G show.
You did it this time.
Yes, I did. Yes, there's that dark humor again. So go back to your list of questions because we got off track. So what was your next question? You gave me 2. What's the third?
This is going to have to be 2-part episode because we've got so much to talk about. Because I do have a list we're going to talk about, and I'm just going to read through it quickly because it's a lot of information. But we're going to touch on some of the things that I've interviewed all my friends for the last few weeks that work in the hospital, and we've narrowed down a few things that lead to staff burnout and anxiety and PTSD.
Okay, stop. This is a perfect opportunity because you've kind of led into it.
Yeah.
This is a perfect opportunity to stop this one and start a new one so we can have a 2-part episode. Because splitting recordings is extremely difficult. I don't know if anybody's ever done it, but if you want a producer gig that pays nothing, give me a call because we don't have any budget. So there's that. You'd be working for free.
Did I do a good segue? Is that what that's called?
You did do a great segue. So for right now, this is the end of part 1. If you want to listen to part 2, you'll have to wait until next week when we have Michaela back with us. This is Studio Magic. She's staying right there. We're just going to start new. Anyway, thank you for listening to A Silent War Within. Please tune in to the second part so you can hear the rest of the story. As Paul Harvey used to say, you guys remember that? And that's the rest of the story. You know, I wish I was Paul Harvey, but I'm not in any way. Tune into the next show.
Paul Harvey.
Yeah, very. Tune into the next show. Tune into the next part so we can see what Michaela's got to say, see what her coworkers say. We've even got my wife's input on that one. So make sure that you listen to the next part of this episode so that we can get the rest of it. Again, you guys can find us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all the places that you get your podcast is where we stream at. Make sure you leave us a review. And for right now, that's it for us. And as always, be safe, take care of your mind, and we'll talk soon.
You've been listening to A Silent War Within. If this episode resonated, please subscribe, leave a review, and share with someone who needs to hear it. Remember, you're not alone and your well-being matters. It's time to end this silent war.